Damn, that's a whole lot of bloodstains. Shields up, Ironbreakers, and welcome back to Elden Ring. So before we begin today's video, I should mention I am going to be showcasing some gameplay footage of the final boss of the DLC, and I'm also going to be talking about it. So if this is going to be something that you consider to be a spoiler, then I would recommend you check out the video at a later date. This is going to be your one and only spoiler warning, so let's go ahead and let's begin. Now yesterday I finished my second run-through of the DLC with this character, which as you can imagine, this was my big bonk boy. We were basically just using big beefy hammers and pummeling our way through the DLC. The main purpose of this build was not even to use this specific hammer. This just ended up being what I used for the final boss, and we're going to be talking about that some more. The whole purpose of this build was actually to be running around with a great shield, like I was using black steel great shield, and that's sometimes a distinguished great shield because I really like the look of the distinguished great shield. And then I would either use the anvil hammer, or I would use the black steel great hammer, or in some situations I also use Devonia's hammer plus 10. So the reason I'm making this video today is because, you know, we still have the discussion where there's a lot of people saying that the final boss of the DLC is far too hard, and this is something that I personally do not agree with. And let me explain to you my personal reasonings why I feel this way. So, number one, according to Miyazaki and the team, this is going to be the only piece of DLC that we're going to be receiving for Elden Ring. That means that facing off against Radahn, that is going to be the final boss that you will ever fight in Elden Ring. For all intents and purposes, he is meant as the actual final big challenge that you have to overcome. When you think about it like that, and you take into consideration that Elden Ring is supposed to be a more challenging game, then it makes sense that this is going to be a boss that is supposed to be memorable. It is supposed to be remembered. And that means, you know, Miyazaki expects you to bring everything that you have to bear. Whatever skills you have, and when I say skills, I mean skills both in terms of your twitch reflexes and ability to dodge things, as well as your ability to put together an adequate build to go ahead and defeat Radahn. The idea is like bring everything to the forefront, whether that is summons from other players or your own ashen summons, whether that is great shields, whether that is bleed weapons, frost weapons, very powerful spells, all of that stuff. To me, no matter what you used when you were killing the boss, unless it's something that is bugged like the whole rolling, what was it called? Rolling sparks thing, which was clearly a bug that you would point it down and it would deal just like redonkulous amounts of damage for no reason, unreasonable amounts of damage. I believe that another one is like impenetrable thorns that also feels like it might be a little bit too powerful, even though From Software hasn't really patched it, so maybe that's intended. I don't know, but I believe you can delete Radahn fairly easy with that as well. But basically, unless you're using something that, you know, could be considered an exploit, which I do feel like rolling sparks is very obviously kind of like an exploit, or even using like mods or something where you're changing the game files and you're making the boss easier to kill, you're making your character invulnerable, something like that. To me, any kill on the boss is pretty much a legitimate kill. Again, whether you summons, great shields, whatever. To me, it doesn't matter at all. And as a matter of fact, I think that was the intention of Miyazaki behind this boss, is like bring everything. Now, some people like to play the game in a more challenging fashion, so you like not using summons. So for me, for instance, in my first run through, and even in this one, I decided, you know what, I don't want to use summons, but this is something that I'm aware that I'm limiting myself and that I'm challenging myself, and therefore I'm going to suffer more, and it is going to be harder because of that. The part that I don't understand is that there's a lot of people that refuse to use all of the tools that are in the game, and then they complain that it is too hard. So whenever I would get to a boss that I was like, man, this boss just feels like it's impossible, I would try to adapt to the boss. Okay, so what about if I use this other strategy? What about if I use this other thing? What about if I change this? What about if I change that? And you change and you adapt to the boss that you are fighting, and eventually you break through, whether it is through the practice or through basically making yourself a little bit more resilient to what the boss is doing, thus creating more time for you to practice and more mistakes that you can make throughout the fight in a way that you can still survive. And again, I know that for a lot of people are going to consider that to be cheesy or whatever, but it's like, I don't understand. Like, if you're just going to come in here and you're going to be like, no, I'm going to put blinders on, and it's like, this is my build, and it cannot change for any reason. I've never played these games like this. Me, it's like I upgrade my weapon and then I have like a couple of alternatives that I can swap to if I feel like, okay, this weapon is not working, or maybe I need something else. Like, I came into the DLC, for instance, my very first run through, and I had the Lance and I had the Serpent Hunter. so that I can go shield and poke and all of that stuff. And I was even using a medium shield throughout most of it. I've only used, I think, the great shield on 2 bosses in that playthrough. But, you know, I was mostly using a medium shield that is even not that great at blocking. It was just something to have to block the occasional hit and then just go ahead and do the poking thing with the spears. And that was my whole thing, because I wanted to make a gun lance. That was kind of the point of that playthrough, right? And so I go through the whole game, and the point was I would get to certain bosses and I'd be like, okay, so blocking here isn't working very well. Let me swap and let me dual wield and then come down on the boss with jumping attacks and stuff like that. And I kind of did the same thing in this build as well. At certain points I'd be like, okay, so I want more damage. Boom, give me 2 big colossal weapons, give me jump attacks, boom, slam down. Or maybe I want more defensive. Let's go with shield, do all of that stuff, right? So initially this build was actually meant to use, like I told you, a great shield, and it was doing like a counter type of playstyle, right? I was using the Black Steel Great Shield, Distinguished Great Shield, and with either the Anvil Hammer or the Black Steel Great Hammer, because the Black Steel Great Hammer has this thing where it does additional damage on counterattacks, and I've always loved counterattacks in Elden Ring, which I thought was a really cool thing, which is whenever you block and you counter, feels great. I love that, because I like shields. That's just the way that I like doing things, right? So I come into Radahn, and I'm coming in with a Great Shield, and this is the thing that I find interesting, because a lot of people say, oh, Great Shield is absolute cheese. But I'm coming in with a Great Shield, and what I'm finding is, like, the knockback from him hitting me is preventing me from doing counters, because when he would hit you, in most of his attacks, he hits you so hard that if I'm using the Anvil Hammer, usually I would go for the counter and I would miss, because he would be too far away from me. So you can't effectively counter, because it's not like you can, oh, he hit me, let me move forward and then counter. No, you have to counter immediately. And if he hits you, knocks you back enough that you then can't counter with that weapon, your Great Shield, it's fantastic. You can tank everything. It's great. Guess what? You can't do shit for damage, though, so it fucking sucks, right? That's the whole point. So what did I do? I changed the build, just like I always change things around. And I don't mean change the build as in respec. I mean I changed what I was doing. Now let me show you guys what the kill actually looks like for those of you guys that weren't here for that stream. Here you go. Fuck! It's so miserable when you miss that. Well, the thing didn't happen again, boys. Need that break. There it is. Again. Yes! Do it. And now for maximum greed. Sit down, bitch! Woo! Now the interesting thing is that this kill does not use a Great Shield, does not use summons, but yet a lot of people will also consider it to be cheese. At which point I'm like, well, what am I allowed to use? Am I not allowed to use strength to poise break? That's the strength of a strength build, is that it can poise break. And you get like a good Ash of War that you can kind of like tank through a couple of hits, dish out decent chunks of damage. Sounds like it's a pretty valid strategy to me. I mean, people that are running around procking bleeds everywhere and doing all these crazy things, that seems to be valid. Like, what's the big deal about this? But anyway, for a lot of these people, there's not going to be any convincing them. Like, I didn't do this to convince people. I did this because I came in here with the Great Shield and I was like, Great Shield's not working. Let me go ahead and swap it around. And I swapped the build and I adapted to what I needed to do. And this is one of the things that I find a lot of players aren't doing. And this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up to this video to kind of hopefully help you guys, help yourselves. Those of you that are struggling with the final boss and you think that the final boss is too hard, because you can't dodge every single attack. Here's the thing. If you want to dodge every single attack of the last boss, you're probably going to need to be light rolling. And the problem with light rolling is that the second you miss one dodge, you're going to die. I mean, you might not die, but you're going to get, like, clipped for chunks of... I can't even imagine how much damage you will be taking if you're going to get caught midway through a roll naked. If you're not going to get one shot, you're going to get pretty close to getting one shot, even at 60 vigor. But then again, I don't know, because I don't really play like that. I don't really do the whole, oh, I'm going to run around naked, light rolling, doing all of this stuff. Because I noticed from the very first time that I fought Radahn, I was like, I'm never going to be able to roll all this because I'm not skilled enough. So what did I do instead in my very first playthrough? I put on all the armor that I possibly could, and I was like, well, if I can't roll through it, can I tank through it? And I tanked through it. And, you know, naturally this time around, I was getting ready to do it with the Great Shield as well, but then I noticed Great Shield's not being effective. It's not working because I can't counter. If I can't counter, I can't deal, like, the biggest damage that I was doing with this build, so I need to swap things around, and that's what I did. And you guys might say, oh, you just swapped your whole build around to make it more powerful, and now I'm going to show you that that is actually not the case, because in the attempt, you guys can see that I'm using this, which is the, what's this called again? The Giant Crusher. This is actually a weapon from the base game. Now, the reason I use the Giant Crusher is because I mistakenly assumed that Radahn was resilient to holy damage, but having checked Fextra Life, according to the stats that are in there, he actually doesn't have resistance to holy damage. So I could have even done more damage if I'd have taken probably this, the Black Steel Great Hammer, because it actually suits my stats way better than the Giant Crusher. But I thought that I needed to just do pure physical damage and not split my damage into holy because I thought he was going to be resisting holy. Apparently he doesn't. I don't actually know what the stats are. I just looked at Fextra Life. It said he has 0 damage negation to holy, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because Mikkel is right behind him in the second phase. Shouldn't he have holy damage negation? But whatever. Because it was like on the very first, I don't know if it was the first or the second attempt that I did with this, I killed it, so I was like, I didn't even worry about it. But let me tell you guys about my stats, right? So we have 60 Vigor, it says 61 because we have the red hood, and that also gives you +1 to Vigor. We have 25 Mind, 40 Endurance, 78 Strength, which actually should be 80, but because I swapped some stats around so that I could use Smith Script weapons and whatnot, then I started pumping a bunch of Faith because I was using those other 2 hammers, and both of them also have scaling in Faith. But basically, this 40 Faith is doing almost nothing for me in this run. And I say almost nothing because I am using Golden Vow. So Golden Vow needed like 25 Faith, so I guess you could do that. But then again, you can also replace Golden Vow by other things. The reason I ended up having to use spells on this character, the buffs, is because whenever this was the first character I ever played Elden Ring with, and I didn't do the Blackguards quest, and because of that, I didn't have access to boiled, what's it called? Boiled crab. And boiled crab is a ton of damage reduction. It's super convenient. I highly recommend boiled crab. But the whole point was I needed something to reduce damage, so I went with Golden Vow and the Black Flames Blessing, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Black Flames Protection. Yeah, so Black Flame Protection does something similar to the boiling crab. It reduces your damage, and that's the whole point that I feel like a lot of people are leaving a lot of damage reduction on the table. So you have like your 4 ideal talismans that you're going to bring into a fight, and you're not even considering swapping those out for resistances, and that's pretty much what I did. So you come into this fight, and I'm like, man, Radahn is hitting like a truck. Boom, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman boosts physical damage negation. Man, Radahn in that second phase with those light attacks hits super hard. Boom, Golden Braid boosts holy damage negation by the utmost. Fantastic. Then what else? We go with the Great Jar's Arsenal, which greatly increases your equipment load, lets you equip really beefy armor. And then we go ahead and we use the Armor of Solitude, both on hands and chest. And then I just grab whatever other piece of armor would allow me to medium roll, because I just wanted to be able to medium roll. And then for the head, we went with the Crimson Hood to increase our health as well. We also have Morgoth's Great Rune right there, which also increases our health. So we popped the Rune Arc to increase the health even more. So it's like, the thing is, just notice the amount of things I'm buffing myself with in preparation for this boss, right? So every attempt before the boss starts, we go Black Flames Protection. And then we go, I actually use Bestial Vitality, even though that doesn't really matter that much. But I was just like, I'm drinking a mana potion before the fight anyway, so I'll grab Bestial Vitality as well. Golden Vow for additional damage and defense. And stack a bunch of that stuff, right? And then when it comes to my Mixed Physic, which I also popped right at the beginning, this one is going to have the Opaline Heart tier, which boosts all damage negation, and the Stone Barb Crack tier, which basically makes it easier for you to break enemy stance. I was actually confused because I was looking at this and I started looking at stances and I was thinking of like Rolana stance and I was like, did I have the wrong tier? But no, you use this one and it makes it easier for you to break the enemy. And obviously what I'm going to do as a big strength wielding user, I'm going to try to break the boss as many times as possible, as fast as I possibly can, taking as many chances as I possibly can. So we're going to be using the Lion's Claw, and I was considering using the other one, the Savage Lion's Claw. The problem is you don't have that many openings in this boss. So I was like, well, if I go with Savage Lion's Claw, I'm going to have to go all the way into the second attack in order to actually deal the same amount of, not the same amount, but deal a decent chunk of poise damage. Whereas if I just take the regular Lion's Claw, I can just do real quick, bam, right? Real quick, bam. And in some of the low attacks that the boss does, you actually jump over them, which is cool. So you jump over some of the attacks that he does as well. So, you know, you have a high chance of landing the attack, and I even missed the first hit on him with Lion's Claw, as you guys can see on that attempt. But you have a nice chance to dodge boss attacks at the same time. Even if I do get hit, I have a bunch of stuff here that is going to help me, like the Golden Braid, the Dragon's Crest, the buffs, the mixed physic. All of these things are going to ensure that, hey, even if we do get hit, even if we do take damage, we're not going to instantly die, and we're going to have enough openings to recover. And then it's just practice. But the thing that I seem to find is that a lot of people are like, no, I want to come in here with all damage talismans. I want to come in here with the exact weapon that I came in, and that needs to work. And it's like, it just reminds me of Alatreon. I don't know if you guys, those of you who follow me from Monster Hunter, back in the day, Capcom released Alatreon, fantastic monster, loved fighting him. And basically a lot of people complained about it because they were used to just using blast weapons. Everybody had their build with blast, and everybody wanted to use blast weapons. But in Alatreon, you needed to use an elemental weapon to trigger some fight mechanics that would prevent you from dying. And people refused. They were like, no, I need to use my blast weapon. This is the only thing that I want to use. And Capcom said, no, if you don't use elemental, you're going to die. And people review bombed the game because of it. And it's very frustrating. It's just extremely frustrating is all I'm saying. But fundamentally, you know, when I talk about these things and I say that, like, I don't think the final boss is too hard, I'm just saying that you need to adapt yourself to what you're doing. Either that is you bring ashes, you bring a great shield, or you do none of those things and you learn how to dodge everything perfectly. You change your build to be more defensive or more offensive, which is something that I did for every single boss. Depending on the boss that I'm fighting, I might go more defensive or more offensive. Depending on how I feel, do I have a good mastery on this boss's moveset? Then I can be a little bit more defensive, and it's fine. Do I not? Maybe I want to go even more offensive so that I can kill him faster. So that way I can make mistakes, and even if I do make mistakes, I'm just going to heal through it and keep plugging at it until I kill him. There are plenty of ways to deal with the challenges that the game presents to you. You don't have to just like play your one build one way and that's it. And, you know, I'm not willing to sacrifice any damage at all on my build. I mean, okay, you don't have to, but at that point, you're going to have to get really friggin' good at dodging. That's it. Hopefully this helps somebody out there, you know, maybe change a couple of charms here and there. Check out what you can change on your build. I'm not even saying respec, because like I told you, this build, the way that I defeated the boss, this is terrible. Like, friggin' 40 faith? Wasted. I could have way more mind, and I wouldn't have to waste time, you know, drinking mana potions mid-fight, which is like a survivability thing. If you're stopping to drink a mana potion, you can die. So it's like, I could have optimized the build way more if I was willing to respec, which if you are willing to respec, you can make this even easier for yourself. But it's like a lot of people just assume, oh, you have to respec, you have to do these. It's like, no, just a couple of minor tweaks can help you immensely. And hopefully, you know, showing you guys this one where it's like, okay, no great shields, no summons, definitely not the best player in the world. Like, you're not going to find me next to the skill levels of some of the top players in this game, not by a long shot. And I still did it. As a matter of fact, if I can do something, the way that you look at it is like, hey, if Rurikhan can do it, anybody can do it. And here I am, once again, being a gatekeeper, trying to, you know, gatekeep people through the boss. I don't know, bro. I'm too tired for this. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like. If you did not enjoy it, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.